Daniel Carter stood quietly near the kitchen doorway, while laughter echoed across his parents' dining room. Crystal glasses clinked together, expensive perfume filled the air, and Vanessa Carter sat proudly at the center of the table like a queen enjoying her throne. "Another promotion?" their mother asked excitedly. Vanessa smirked as she lifted her wine glass. "Regional marketing director, bigger office too." Their father laughed proudly. "That's my girl, always aiming higher." Daniel lowered his eyes toward the paper plate in his hands. Nobody asked about his day. Nobody ever did anymore. 8 years earlier, they used to brag about him too. Back then, he was the family hero, the disciplined son who joined the army at 19, while everyone else chased easy dreams. His mother cried when he left for training camp. His father shook his hand proudly in front of neighbors. But wars changed people, so did injuries. Daniel returned home with a damaged knee, sleepless nights, and memories he never spoke about. The army medically discharged him after his final overseas deployment. Since then, life had become painfully ordinary. He worked night security at a warehouse outside the city, and rented a tiny apartment with peeling walls and unreliable heat. To Vanessa, that made him a failure. "Oh look," Vanessa said loudly, leaning back in her chair, "our national hero finally decided to join us." A few guests chuckled softly. Daniel forced a polite smile and walked toward the table. "Traffic was bad, sure," Vanessa replied. "Or maybe guarding boxes at your warehouse is exhausting." More laughter spread around the room. Their mother sighed. "Vanessa, enough," but even she smiled a little. Daniel sat quietly beside his cousin Mark, who awkwardly avoided eye contact. The humiliation wasn't new anymore. Family dinners had slowly turned into performances where Vanessa entertained everyone by mocking her older brother. "So Daniel," one of Vanessa's coworkers asked, "what exactly do you do now?" Before he could answer, Vanessa jumped in. "He protects toilet paper and delivery trucks from dangerous criminals." The table burst into laughter again. Daniel kept his face calm, though the words cut deeper than he expected. Years in the army had taught him discipline, patience, and silence. But sometimes silence felt heavier than bullets, you know. Vanessa continued, "I still don't understand why people romanticize military careers. 8 years wasted, and for what? Bad knees and security jobs." The room grew quieter. Daniel slowly placed his fork down. Their father cleared his throat but said nothing. Vanessa noticed Daniel's expression and rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please, don't give me that wounded soldier stare. I'm just being honest." Honest, that word stayed in Daniel's mind like poison. Honesty would have been telling everyone how many nights he spent carrying injured men through gunfire. Honesty would have been explaining why loud noises still woke him at 3 a.m., sweating and shaking. Honesty would have revealed the medals locked away in a dusty drawer, because looking at them hurt too much. But Daniel never defended himself, not because he was weak, because exhausted people stop explaining their pain to those determined not to understand it. Vanessa leaned toward her friends again. Honestly, if Daniel had spent those years building a real career instead of playing hero, maybe he'd actually own a house by now. That sentence finally pierced through him, not because of the insult, because once upon a time, Daniel had delayed his entire future, believing his family respected sacrifice. He stood slowly from his chair. "I should get going," he said calmly. His mother frowned. "You barely ate." "I'm not hungry." Vanessa shrugged carelessly. "Don't be dramatic." Daniel reached for his jacket near the doorway. Rain tapped softly against the windows outside. Before leaving, he glanced once at the family photos hanging on the wall. Vanessa's college graduation. Vanessa receiving awards, Vanessa smiling beside executives. There was only one photo of Daniel, small, faded, nearly hidden behind a plant. A picture taken before deployment when pride still existed in their eyes. Funny how quickly admiration disappears when uniforms come off. As Daniel opened the front door, Vanessa called out one final time, "Try not to arrest any cardboard boxes tonight, soldier." The room exploded with laughter again. Daniel paused briefly but never turned around, because deep down he remembered something none of them knew. Years ago, in another country filled with smoke and gunfire, A terrified man once looked Daniel in the eyes and said, "If I ever see you again, I'll repay this debt for the rest of my life." 3 weeks passed after the humiliating family dinner, yet Daniel still heard Vanessa's laughter in his mind during quiet nights at the warehouse. The loading docks remained cold and empty after midnight, giving him too much time to think. Most people believed pain came from enemies. Daniel had learned it hurt more when it came from family. One rainy Thursday afternoon, his phone buzzed while he sat inside the small security office reviewing camera feeds. Vanessa's name appeared on the screen. He considered ignoring it. Instead, he answered calmly, "Hello, Daniel, I need a favor." Of course she did. "What kind of favor?" "There's an executive gala tomorrow night. Huge event, important people." Her voice sounded rushed. "My boyfriend canceled on me last minute." Daniel leaned back in his chair silently. And I need someone to drive me there." He almost laughed. "You have a car." "Yes, but parking is horrible downtown, and honestly," she hesitated before adding carelessly, "you already own a suit, technically." Daniel looked down at his faded security uniform. "You want me to be your chauffeur?" "Oh, relax," Vanessa said. "It's just one evening. Besides, free food." Daniel should have refused immediately, but a lifetime in the army had created habits difficult to break. When people needed help, he gave it, even when they didn't deserve it. "What time?" 7 sharp, and Daniel, her tone sharpened. "Please don't embarrass me." The call ended. Daniel stared quietly at the blank screen. The next evening, rain covered the city streets in silver reflections as Daniel parked outside Vanessa's luxury apartment building. Moments later, she stepped outside wearing a stunning black designer dress, her confidence glowing brighter than the hotel lights behind her. She stopped beside his old sedan and frowned instantly. "You couldn't wash this thing." Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Good evening to you two." Vanessa slid into the passenger seat with visible disappointment. "Just don't park near the entrance. Most executives there drive imported cars." The entire ride downtown felt painfully long. Vanessa spent most of it scrolling through social media while criticizing his suit, haircut, posture, and even the watch he wore. A cheap military, issued one he had kept for years. "You still wear that thing?" she asked mockingly. "It works." "It screams poverty." Daniel stayed silent. The gala took place inside the Grand Meridian Hotel, one of the most expensive buildings in the city. Crystal chandeliers glowed above hundreds of wealthy guests dressed in tailored suits and sparkling gowns. Soft piano music floated through the ballroom while waiters carried silver trays filled with champagne. The moment Vanessa entered, her entire personality transformed. She smiled wider, laughed louder, walked slower. Daniel recognized the performance immediately. In rooms like this, status mattered more than character. Vanessa introduced him to several coworkers throughout the evening, though always with hidden embarrassment. "This is my brother Daniel," she said to one executive. "He used to be in the army." Used to, as if his service had become an expired achievement. Another man shook Daniel's hand briefly. "So what do you do now?" Before Daniel answered, Vanessa smirked. "He's in corporate security now." Technically true, just heavily edited. A few people nodded politely before losing interest almost instantly. Later, near the ballroom bar, Vanessa drank another glass of champagne and grew even bolder. "You know what's funny?" she told her coworkers loudly. "Daniel still stands like he's waiting for orders." One woman laughed awkwardly. Vanessa continued, enjoying the attention. "Honestly, he takes everything so seriously. You'd think guarding warehouses was national security." Daniel stared quietly toward the massive windows overlooking the city skyline. He had survived explosions, ambushes, gunfire, yet somehow this hurt differently. Suddenly, movement across the ballroom caught his attention. A tall, silver-haired man had just entered surrounded by executives and security personnel. The atmosphere shifted instantly. People whispered excitedly, "That's Richard Hale." Someone near the bar murmured, "CEO of Hale International." Vanessa straightened immediately, nervous excitement flooding her face. "Oh my God, he owns half the city." Richard Hale walked confidently through the ballroom greeting investors and business leaders. Then suddenly he stopped walking, his eyes locked directly onto Daniel. The billionaire's expression changed completely. Shock, disbelief, then emotion. Without warning, Richard Hale stepped away from the crowd and walked straight across the ballroom toward him. The music seemed quieter with every step. Vanessa noticed the movement and whispered nervously, "Why is he coming here?" Daniel frowned slightly, confused himself. The powerful CEO stopped directly in front of him, staring into his face for several silent seconds. Then Richard Hale spoke words that instantly froze the entire room. "Sergeant Daniel Carter," he whispered emotionally. "After all these years, I finally found you." The ballroom fell silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to lips, and dozens of curious eyes turned toward Daniel and Richard Hale. Even the piano player slowed uncertainly as confusion spread across the luxurious hall. Vanessa blinked rapidly. "You know my brother?" Richard Hale barely heard her. The billionaire CEO stood frozen before Daniel, emotion filling his face in a way no one in the room expected from a man known for ruthless business deals and cold discipline. Daniel studied him carefully. Older now, gray hair, sharper features, but the eyes were the same. Suddenly, recognition hit him. "The convoy," Daniel said quietly. Richard gave a slow nod, almost overwhelmed. "Northern Kandahar province, 8 years ago." A wave of whispers moved through nearby executives. Vanessa looked between them in disbelief. "Wait, what is happening?" Richard turned toward the crowd slowly. "Your brother saved my life." Complete silence followed. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. He hated attention, especially this kind, but Richard continued speaking, his voice heavy with memory. "Our vehicles were ambushed outside a mountain pass. Gunfire everywhere, explosions." He swallowed hard. "Most people ran for cover." Daniel remembered every second. Smoke choking the air, screaming soldiers, the burning wreckage. Richard, then a government logistics contractor, trapped beneath twisted metal while bullets tore through the convoy. "You were injured," Daniel reminded him quietly. Richard laughed bitterly. "Injured, Sergeant, I was seconds away from dying." Several guests stared at Daniel differently now. Not as a poor security guard, not as Vanessa's embarrassing older brother, but as someone dangerous, disciplined, and real. Richard pointed toward him firmly. "While everyone else retreated, he came back for me." Daniel lowered his eyes. He had never spoken about that day to anyone, not even family. Richard's voice grew emotional. "This man carried me through live gunfire for almost half a mile after a second explosion destroyed our evacuation vehicle." The ballroom remained completely silent now. Vanessa's face had turned pale. Daniel could almost see her replaying every cruel joke she had ever made about him. Richard continued, his respect unmistakable. "I offered him money afterward, a reward, anything he wanted." One executive asked softly, "What did he take?" Richard looked at Daniel with admiration. "Nothing." Murmurs spread instantly across the room. "He said soldiers don't leave people behind." Vanessa slowly stepped backward, as if the floor itself had become unstable beneath her heels. Daniel finally spoke, trying to calm the attention. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Hale." Richard smiled faintly. "That's exactly why you deserve everything." For years, Richard Hale had searched for the soldier who saved him. But military records were incomplete after Daniel's medical discharge, and overseas operations remained heavily classified. Eventually, Richard believed he would never find him again, until tonight. "You disappeared," Richard said. Daniel shrugged lightly. Life happened. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly as he noticed Daniel's inexpensive suit and worn watch. The billionaire understood immediately. Life had not rewarded him kindly. Meanwhile, people who contributed far less enjoyed luxury and praise. Richard turned toward the executives surrounding them. "Do you know what leadership actually looks like?" he asked firmly. "Not presentations, not polished speeches, not expensive degrees." He pointed directly toward Daniel. "It looks like the man willing to carry someone else while bullets are flying." The room erupted into applause. Not polite applause, real applause. Several executives approached Daniel immediately, shaking his hand respectfully. The same people who ignored him an hour earlier now treated him like the most important person in the ballroom. Vanessa stood speechless nearby. For the first time in years, she had nothing clever to say. Richard then reached inside his suit jacket and removed a business card embossed with gold lettering. "Hale International is expanding global operations," he said. "I need people I can trust, not people who simply look impressive in meetings." He handed the card to Daniel carefully. "Senior Director of Security Operations. Salary starts at $300,000 annually." Vanessa nearly dropped her champagne glass. Daniel stared at the card silently. "I haven't worked corporate leadership before," he admitted. Richard smiled warmly. "Courage, loyalty, and integrity can't be taught in business school." Then his expression hardened slightly as he added, "But character reveals itself under fire." Daniel understood the deeper meaning instantly. Across the ballroom, Vanessa lowered her eyes in shame. Because for the first time in her life, she realized success and worth were not the same thing. And the brother she mocked for years had quietly become the strongest person in the entire room. The morning after the gala felt different for everyone who had been in that ballroom. For Daniel Carter, it felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful exactly, he wasn't used to peace, but lighter, as if years of invisible weight had shifted just slightly off his shoulders. He sat in his small apartment, holding the black business card Richard Hale had given him. The gold lettering caught the weak sunlight coming through the blinds. Senior Director of Security Operations, $300,000, a title that didn't match the life he had been living. His phone buzzed. "Vanessa," he almost didn't answer, then he did. "Daniel," her voice was different. Softer, almost uncertain. "Can we talk?" He paused. "About what?" A long silence followed. Then, quieter than he had ever heard her speak, she said, "Everything." That same day, their parents insisted on a family lunch. For once, no one laughed when Daniel walked in. No sarcastic remarks, no performance. Vanessa was already there, sitting unusually still, her usual confidence absent. Their mother looked nervous, constantly adjusting plates. Their father avoided eye contact, something rare in itself. The atmosphere felt unfamiliar, respectful but fragile. Vanessa finally spoke first. "I didn't know," she said quietly. Daniel sat down across from her. "Didn't know what?" Her fingers tightened around her glass. "That you weren't just struggling." He didn't respond immediately. "Because the truth was more complicated than she wanted it to be. You never asked," he said simply. That sentence landed heavier than any insult she had ever thrown at him. Their mother cleared her throat awkwardly. "Daniel, we are proud of you." It sounded rehearsed, but it was a start. Vanessa swallowed hard. "I was awful to you." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. The anger he used to carry like a weapon wasn't there anymore. It had burned out somewhere between gunfire and silence years ago. "I know," he said calmly. "That was it. No shouting, no revenge speech, just truth." Vanessa blinked, tears forming but not falling yet. "I thought success meant money and status. I thought I was better than you." Daniel leaned back slightly. "And now," her voice cracked, "now I don't know what I am." Silence filled the table. Outside, cars passed through the street, ordinary life continuing as if nothing important was happening inside that room. Daniel finally spoke again. "You're not better or worse," he said. "You were just looking at the wrong things." That line hit her harder than anything else. Later that week, Daniel visited Hale International headquarters for the first time. Glass towers stretched into the sky. Security systems recognized him instantly. Employees who didn't even know his name stepped aside respectfully as he walked through the building beside Richard Hale. Richard spoke casually as they moved. "You'll redesign the entire security structure. Global operations, high-risk zones, training protocols." Daniel nodded, observing everything carefully. "It's not just about systems," Daniel said. Richard raised an eyebrow. "What is it about then?" "People," Daniel replied. "Systems fail, people don't if you choose the right ones." Richard smiled slightly. "That's why I hired you." Weeks passed. Daniel didn't become arrogant. He didn't change into someone else. He simply became recognized. Veterans were brought into training programs he designed. Former soldiers were hired into stable careers. Security operations became more disciplined, more human, more effective. And slowly, Daniel stopped being the broken soldier his family once laughed at. He became something else entirely. A leader who didn't need to shout to be heard. Meanwhile, Vanessa changed too. She stopped mocking, stopped comparing, started listening. One evening, she visited Daniel's new office at Hale International. The skyline behind him glowed orange with sunset light. "I see you differently now," she admitted quietly. Daniel didn't look up from the report he was reading. "Good?" She hesitated. "Do you hate me?" That question finally made him pause. He leaned back in his chair thinking. "No," he said honestly, "I don't waste energy on that anymore." Vanessa nodded slowly, tears finally falling. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," she whispered. Daniel looked at her calmly. "I didn't earn everything I have because people treated me fairly," he said. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving, it's about moving forward." A long silence followed. For the first time in years, Vanessa didn't feel superior. She just felt human, and Daniel Carter, once mocked, dismissed, and underestimated, stood not as someone seeking revenge, but as someone who had already outgrown it completely.